It's the moment of institutional panel, finding a common ground between cooperation and competition in the global space arena. The moderator isn't with us, but is with us with the streaming, is Marcello Spagnuolo, the scientific board member of Limes Geopolitical Review. And I call here Giovanni Colangelo, Inspector General of ESA, Augusto Cramarossa, Head of Strategic Area Coordination in the Space Economy Unit of ASI, Luisa Riccardi, Director of the Department of Technological Innovation, Secretariat General of Defense, Carolina Muti, Senior Research Fellow, Security and Defense, Istituto Affari Internazionali. Prego. Prego, Marcello.
Buongiorno, mi sentite? So, good morning everyone. I would like to thank Giuseppe Acerno and the Distretto Pugliese for inviting me. I'm very sad not to be there in presence, but the post-COVID consequences prevented me to be there in presence. But anyway, we will try this premiere in moderating a panel with the distinguished panelists online with this remote manner. So the panelists have been already presented, so I don't want to take much time before their discussions. The panel is a more political panel because it's finding a common ground between cooperation and competition in a global space arena. And the very last slides of the previous panelists have shown us a snapshot of one side of the problem, the orbital debris. So I will really briefly introduce this panel, getting the idea of these slides and getting the idea from the actuality, because very few days ago we had a summit in Japan with the G7, and for the first time in the communiqué de presse of the G7, they have explicitly mentioned space, and in particular two themes of space, as a point in agenda of the summit. They have pointed out the importance not to do destructive operations in space, which can provoke debris. So they have, the G7 leaders, they have pointed out the importance to not perform aggressive operation in space in order to have a sustainable space. And this is quite important. It gives me the possibility to introduce the discussion of the distinguished panelists, because space exploration is something which now goes far beyond the provision of essential services for the functioning of our society, of our economy, also enabling military operation. Is getting more and more a geopolitical issue in a realistic sense. But there are people, a lot of people, who says that our future, mankind future, will depend on space exploration. The past scientist Stephen Hawking was used to saying that we have to migrate in other planets, and the same things says Elon Musk, which is a benchmark in private entrepreneurs of space. So the belief is that the medium-long term, thanks to the use of rare materials available on other celestial bodies, we will establish robotic sites managed by artificial intelligence, robots, or even men, for industrial energy production. And this is something which additive material technologies is an enabler in a sense. So this possibility to acquire resources necessary for a sustainable economic growth in the future is something which is entering in this agenda. I would like to ask to our distinguished panelists, and I will start first from the representative of the agencies, to give us their evaluation and their perspective on this maybe long-term perspective. Mr. Colangelo, to you the floor. Sorry, just to start, because we have 4 questions, we are 4 panelists, each question should last 3 to 4 minutes, so it's not very long, but I know you are aware of that. Sorry, Mr. Colangelo, after you.
Now it should work. I hope it works. So, good morning, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. It's a very long question, but I think that the subject is really very interesting. We have to admit that, the future in space is exploration, but explorations without a proper access to space cannot be done. So the two things go together. So it is exploration plus availability of economically, let's say, cheap launchers, because that is exactly what Europe and what the world needs. So we have also to admit that in the last periods, Europe has not done much for the explorations. Now we are in a new era, we have the possibility to change, and we are really at the top of that. As I think that Roberto introduced, we are the renaissance of the exploration, and that is the moment where Europe has to decide which kind of role they wish to play. So they can be spectators, they can be customers, or we can be leaders. It's as simple as that. Yes, we can do it if we wish. Exploration, again, is important because it's not only, let's say, goes space mining or to colonization, but goes well behind. And in order to be, let's say, sustainable, this kind of a model for exploration, it's extremely important that we meet 3 main objectives, especially for the citizens. So first of all, it is the prestige. Second one is prosperity. And third one is security. If we do play these 3 subjects together for our citizens, exploration will be really the key driver for that. I don't want to remind that, we in the ESA, we are discussing about the possibility to have inspirators. Inspirators is a new way to make exploration. So we don't want to do what things have been done in the past where they are very expensive. We would like to do something that is commercially available, commercially feasible, something that change totally the rule of the game. It is clear in order to do that, you need to have the right people, you need to have the right time, the right pace, therefore the speed. And the third one, we have to change totally the approach over to the things. I think that we can discuss really for the rest of the day, but I would like to give the floor to the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colangelo. I get your interesting point of getting into space because it's something extremely important. I know that the European Space Agency is working on this topic of getting human into space for the benefit and the security of Europe. And so I'm very glad to pass the floor to Augusto Gramarosa. We have worked together many years ago on the access to space issue. So, Augusto, please.
Spero, non so se mi sentite. It's working. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcello. Good morning, everyone. And yes, we work together. We also shared our years in the university in Rome. So our friendship is very long in time. Now, I would like to start, having heard what has been said by Isa, Inspector General, I would like to refer to Marcello, to what we said about Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk. that humankind depends on the ability to explore space and colonize other worlds. I would like to say, first of all, I would like to make an intervention that is more general, because access to space has been already mentioned in the previous intervention. So I would like to say that our planet Earth is our spaceship. We have only this environment, so we have to take care of this environment, and sustainability of our planet, and also sustainability of space activities from a certain point of view, a very important issue that we have to take into consideration. The Italian activities in exploration have been already very well illustrated by Roberto Formaro, who is the director of program in the Italian Space Agency, so I would like to avoid to repeat what has been said by him. But what can we say, according to the introduction made by Marcello, is that I would like to be more general. Space activity and also space exploration clearly provide huge benefit for our society. We can say that we have a direct and indirect benefit. And about space exploration, I would like to say something regarding the fact that at least in Italy, sometimes we say that sometimes the trip itself could be more important than the final destination. So we have to enjoy the trip, and the space exploration, from a certain point of view, can be considered a trip. And if we enjoy the trip, this means that we will receive all the benefit of the technology development and of innovation that has to be used in order to allow the possibility of having the trip. And once the trip is done, we will have for sure very huge benefit in terms of a spin-off coming from space exploration and also technology transfer. Clearly, so I can mention, for example, what has been achieved with the Apollo mission in the 6 years, and also through ISS. So we had a very new project management schemes and methods and procedures, and also very large spin-off in other domains, for example, medical, pharmaceutical, and aeronautics. So what I would like to put in evidence is that exploration for sure has already provided us with a lot of new scientific knowledge and with a huge return in terms of technology. And finally, regarding the also rare materials, I think that this is a new frontier. We have already done something in this perspective with the Rosetta mission, with the DART mission, where we had a very important involvement of Italy, of Italian firms. And so for sure we can say that space exploration is the frontier of our life, and from a certain point of view we have to take into account that space exploration will allow us maybe to have another spaceship.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Augusto. Very inspiring intervention. Thank you very much. Dottoressa Riccardi, you are director of the Department of Technology Innovation within the Ministry of Defense, and we need to have the Ministry of Defense more and more involved in space exploration because of all the issue of security and defense. Which are your perspective about this item?
First of all, let me thank you, Giuseppe, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this plan. Talking about my point of view is my professional point of view. As you said, I'm the director of the innovation department of the Italian MOD. So a different experience in space domain. Basically, for me, space is a domain. So foresee and to predict the exact future of space exploration and its implication for humankind, it's really hard, especially if we consider the turmoil geopolitical situation. And we learn that priorities for nation can change suddenly. And for that reason, taking into account how important is collaboration, the geopolitical situation and the priorities for nation can change the balance between cooperation and competition. Sadly, in the past few years, my experience was that we were moving fast toward cooperation. In space, we do not need to explain that these are dual technologies. These are dual by nature. So it was easier to collaborate. And I saw in my professional experience moving faster from G2G agreement to military-civilian agreement, international agreement. But suddenly, the geopolitical situation changed the global framework. And we know how important it is in terms of complexity and also costs, cooperation in this sector. And for this reason, I think that organizations like the European Space Agency are so important because they could guarantee stable and prosperous cooperation. It doesn't matter what is going on around us. And also, organizations like the Italian Space Agency continually can guarantee cooperation between military and civilian space activities.
Thank you. Thank you, Dottoressa Riccardi. It's very interesting what you are saying. Dottoressa Muti, you are a Senior Research Fellow of Security and Defense at the Istituto Affari Internazionali, which is a very well-known and distinguished think tank, we could say. Yeah? So you have a more analytical view. Which is your perspective with respect to these prospects of space exploration?
Thank you very much. Let me first thank as well the organizers for inviting me. I'm deeply honored to be here as well. And let me start by saying that I really like the metaphor of the current moment that we are living in space exploration is similar to Middle Age and the Renaissance in terms of a dynamic environment characterized by innovation. But I think that it is similar to the Middle Age and the Renaissance also in another aspect. That is the high level of competition, as was already said by President speakers. If you remember, in Italy, in the Renaissance, we had a situation where città-stato were competing between each other, so these city-states, and it was a very fragmented governance and highly competitive, as I already said. So I think that we are in a similar situation in this moment, also in the space exploration. We have new actors, we have a very rapidly changing environment. We have big security concerns, of course, but technological progress is rushing and is bringing us to land the first woman and the next man on the moon in the framework of Artemis. So it is in an irreversible progress, I would say, that humankind dependency and the future of humankind being in space. I think it's something that if we see at the dependence of our societies on space, it will be actually irreversible. But what is interesting to see is not if we will get there. It is already clear that we will get there, but how we will get there and who will lead this process. And this, of course, brings in the topic of how we want to regulate space and space exploration, what governance should governments and private institutions give itself to rule this process. And as my experience is mostly in security and defense, let me say, for example, that recently the European Union published a new space strategy for security and defense, where it mentions that it will respond to space threats and will protect space assets, European space assets in space. But so this is a document published in March, but of course some open questions remains here. For example, how operationally to guarantee this this protection of European assets in space and the responding to space threats. So I will stop here for the moment.
Thank you, Dottoressa Muti. It's very interesting your consideration of the comparison between the present status and the Moyen Age città-stato. It's very interesting. I will get back on that. And also you have anticipated a couple of issues which will be matter of the next questions, in fact. You have mentioned how we will go into space and who will drive this space race. And so the next question for all of you is more political. The next two questions will be more political. So we have to be realistic and know that space exploration now we have a few top players, which are United States, Russia, and China, and then they are followed by European Union, India, Japan. There are other countries which does not have currently comparable spacefaring capacity, but they are trying to acquire. So, in your opinion, also analyzing how they behave in the relationships, do you see elements of awareness of the importance of collaboration to overcome the current and future challenges of the future of humankind? I will start the same round before with Dr. Colangelo.
We also protect the China as our new global space race.
Sorry. Now it works. So, sorry for that. I mean, it happens, but so this is totally normal. And the competition that these two big countries, they are really
now they are really competing are mainly on the launchers, mainly on the broadband internet from space and these mega constellations. I wanted to even remind to everyone that, I mean, we don't have to forget what Starlink has done during these 1.5 years. And I mean, what OneWeb was not able to do because of the lack of inter-satellite link, which is exactly the basis of Starlink. So this type of, let's say, space race now, or this kind of situation, the geopolitical map has changed totally the environment. So before we talked about cooperation would be junior partner or partnership, whatever. Today we don't talk anymore about cooperation, but we talk really about competition. So we have to decide where Europe should stay. If we want to compete or we want to be a junior partner with other, let's say, major space firing powers. In my personal opinion is that, I mean, we as Europe, we need really to open up our doors to everyone, especially in 2021, at least Latin America Space Agency was created. I mean, it is not big, but it can have a lot of potential to grow. We should really work with them. We should work with the Arab Emirates Space Agency. We should work with Brazil. We should work with India. I think that the Europe can be really the leader of these kinds of countries, because if we try to compete with China, with the United States, we certainly fail because we don't have this economic power that they have. Because for them, is colonization, is exploration, whatever you want to call it, is a matter of prestige. And I mean, de facto, they are doing in space what they cannot do on the ground. So, if I say so.
Thank you, Mr. Colangelo. Very shareable your consideration. Before giving the floor to Augusto, I would like to ask the organizer to adjust the microphone of Mr. Colangelo, because it's quite difficult for me to get his words. Augusto, can you follow this consideration of Mr. Colangelo, which are absolutely shareable? What do you say?
Yes, thank you, Marcello. I hope that you can hear me clear.
Yes,
loudly.
yes.
Okay, thanks for the feedback. Okay, the main problem is here, I think, collaboration, cooperation versus competition. So this is something that we are always facing in Europe and also worldwide level. So what I can mention, I will try to be short, but what we have today, we have a number, quite limited number of international agreements and conventions. I would like to mention the Outer Space Treaty, the Rescue Agreement, the Moon Agreement, the Liability Convention, and the Registration Convention. So this is what we have today, what has been approved by some countries, not all the countries. There are rules that are followed, that are put in place according to a voluntary basis. What else we have? We had in the past the agreement for ISS that worked very well with ESA, that was representing Europe in that case. At national level, we also had an agreement not only through ESA but also at bilateral level with NASA. That was very, very important in terms of return for Italy. And I would like to mention this because it was really something usable for the Italian space community. So we had the ISS agreement that, from a certain point of view, could be considered a precursor of other agreement. Now we have the Artemis Accord, and Italy was one of the first European country that signed the agreement. And now, which is the situation? Are these agreements enough to cover all the new activities that now are included in the space scenario? If we take into account, I don't know, space mining, or also the mega constellation, we think, this is not my personal opinion, there are a lot of work that are ongoing in order to verify how other agreements could be discussed and signed at worldwide level. So this is a very important matter because today the acceleration that we had in the space domain was faster than what was already foreseen in the past. Then I would like to spend few words, Marcello, if you allow me, on the situation in Europe. In Europe, we have the European Space Agency, but also European Union that through the European Commission and now the new agency EUSPA are also taking a very important role in the space in Europe. Regarding exploration is something that is managed uniquely by the European Space Agency, while the European Commission, European Union, as of today, doesn't want to take any to start with new development programs. So this is something that we Italy is considering, and again bilateral level with NASA and also with, through the European Space Agency. So if we talk again about cooperation and competition, what are we doing in Europe? In Europe, you know that we have Galileo, IRIS Squared, SSC initiative, and also access to space that was mentioned before. So Europe, from a certain point of view, is trying to have its own independence, its own autonomy, and this means, from a certain point of view, that is moving toward a sort. I would like not to say that is a competition, but for sure it is something quite different with respect to the past. Europe doesn't want to be dependent on other space-faring nation. And so we are building these new capacities and new initiatives. And I would like to mention also, and this is the last point, Marcello, what is happening, for example, in access to space that was mentioned by Colangelo several times. In Europe, for example, we had a very, very good cooperation in access to space through Arianespace, through Vega and Ariane. So a very long-lasting cooperation. Now something is changing because also in ESA we have now new actors, new mini and micro launchers that are mainly developed by a private, mainly in Germany and in Spain. So again, also in Europe we had a very, very good cooperation. Now is moving toward the competition. So this is really an issue at European level and also at worldwide level. So we will continue to discuss as an institution through our government in the European fora in order to try. Clearly, the cooperation is the target for both countries.
Augusto, I thank you very much. It's very, very interesting because you opened the window of a potential new panel on competition and cooperation inside the European Union. I will put clearly in that. It's very interesting point because you have mentioned some issues like this access to space. We have no time to discuss about that, but it's important because you have also give to the audience the idea that there is a sort of, I would not say competition, cooperation, I would say rebalancing of powers inside the European Union. But let's go back to our previous question and listen to Dottoressa Riccardi opinion on these elements of potential awareness of collaboration. Dottoressa, it's up to you.
Yes. You know, I don't want to repeat what was already said. Competition and cooperation. But you know, the balance between cooperation and competition can change, as I said, taking into account the geostrategical situation, and can change, as I said, priorities of nations. But also, you know, this balance can change, and can change the balance between military and civilian interest in space. And so, you know, one can, you know, explode, and another, you know, can just break. So it depends. But again, from my personal experience, there are two keywords that always can build a common ground for competition, for collaboration. It doesn't matter how strong is competition. And the two keywords are research and space, talking about technologies. Space is always, and research in space particularly, is always a good common ground to build cooperation. Because it's easier than, build capabilities. Research is always useful to build trust, to share knowledge, and to define a common framework to share knowledge. So research programs always are useful to build common trust, to permit people to know each other. So let's talk about competition, but do not forget cooperation, especially cooperation on space. That is, as I said, human by nature.
Thank you, Dottoressa Riccardi. I get your point on the fact that you mentioned research as an element of enlarging the cooperation, so not only an element of enabling technology superiority, but also to share cooperation. This is quite very, very important. Really, I would like to listen from Dottoressa Muti the point of view of an analyst on this awareness of importance of collaboration. Dottoressa Muti.
Thank you. Yes, I will start with competition, and then I will get to a few points on cooperation. So I really agree with what Giovanni Colangelo said before about US and China doing in space what they are not able to do on Earth. In fact, the competition that we see and the geopolitical tension that we see growing at the international level on Earth have an extension in space, even in space exploration. That is a matter of with a very important cooperative component, of course. Basically, it's a cooperation, but we see that some space powers are using space exploration as a projection of influence as well. So it is interesting to see how it will evolve. On a more positive note, on cooperation, we see that states are continuing on cooperating along traditional alliances lines. So in Artemis we see more. Oh, sorry. Could you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, now it's
much better.
It's my turn. Sorry for that. So we see that allies on Earth are also somehow allies in space. We see that in Artemis we have mostly so-called Western partners. Japan is part of that, and we see, of course, the difficulties with China and Russia, and in trying to have a common framework for cooperation with its partners. Just think about the ISS example that ISS was mentioned before. If you think that in '93, a few years after the end of the Cold War, Russia was invited to join ISS, and now when we talk about the extension of ISS till 2030, Russia already said that it will withdraw in 2024. So it gives us a strong sign on how cooperation is very difficult with non-traditional allies, let's say, with competitors. And I will just last point on cooperation for Italy. I think Italy should had a strong potential also to cooperate more with partners in the Mediterranean area, and to bring the space cooperation element inside its foreign policy more. The whole country has interest in Mediterranean, and I think that space can reach and develop more partnerships with countries from who we depend on, for example, for energy. So I think that this is maybe an unexplored or less explored area for cooperation for Italy in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Dottoressa Muti. It's very interesting, and I get your point on the established alliance space are in a turmoil situation right now. To jump into the next question, which also recalls what I said in the introduction on the G7 communique. So, having said that the collaboration and competition are quite difficult, what are, in your opinion, the main challenges to preserve and increase security, cooperation in space exploration, and what could be, in geopolitical and security strategy terms, the most effective solution to get into these objectives in the light of orbital congestion, military economic competition, all we have set up to now? Dr. Colangelo.
I have the solution.
Very well.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes, very well.
Thank you again, Dr. Spagnolo. This is again another question that is quite a long one, but very interesting and very well connected with the previous one. I think that we discussed, you request about the challenges we discussed before about these geopolitical issues that, I mean, cannot be forgotten. I mean, then we discuss about the competition and also economical growth, because the things goes together. And then we need to introduce a third element, which is the inspirational part of science and technology. So there is not magic in that. I mean, a strategy, which is a strategy really to compete in the world with this kind of, let's say, issues. For me, there is always the famous 5 pillars theory. This is true for space, this is true for exploration, this is true for everything. So we need to have a proper governance, European-wise. I think that Augusto introduced and Dr. Riccardo introduced about the European competition between ESA and between EU, USPA, and whatever. Again, we are European. I think that we have to be complementary. We don't need to compete. So that's why proper governance must be in place. Then the second point, which is extremely important, is to have resources. Resources can be of any nature, not only economical one, not only funds, but also, I don't know, proper industries. I mean, with the right competencies, with everything. And I think that here we should really do something. And if here we are in this fabulous location, is really also to open up to the possibility that, I mean, to invite people to put more resources into the space, which is extremely important. The third one for the strategy is the processes. We must have a processes. We cannot forget that, I mean, if we don't have a proper process at hand, yes, we go ahead, but we are amateur. We will fail. I mean, the challenges are so many in front of us that we need to be properly handled. The fourth one, which is exactly what I say is the key of everyone, is to have competencies. Thank you, Dr. Riccardi. I mean, you introduced this point, but this is competence in Europe. We have a lot of talents, but we need not only to, let's say, discover the talents, but we need to allow the growth of the talents. I mean, that this is quite an important one. I keep hearing, but we need to acquire, we need to acquire. Yes, it's true, we need to acquire. We need to form, we need to acquire, we need to really offer them whatever we can, but we need to offer them the possibility of growth. And that is, for me, is the key, because I mean, Europe in this kind of endeavor, in this kind of scenario, is really has a lot of competencies. You cannot imagine how good are our engineers, how good are the Italian engineers, by the way, European-wise and also worldwide. I think that is important. The fifth one, it is mindset. We all have to work together for a common objective if we want really to sustain this kind of space race. I would like only to remind one thing about the possibility of how important are the competence, because I mean we don't have to forget that in any industries, if we have a perfect organization with the people that are not competent, I mean this organization, this firm will fail. If you have a bad organization with a very good people, so the quality is very high, whatever it happens, I mean you are successful. I think that this is the type of things that I would like to express. I mean, I would like to share with you. That is important. It is clear that I mean these five pillars have to be there in order to establish a proper and sustainable business model. This is only possible, again, I repeat, if we work in cooperation, in the proper competition. We really see all the challenges and we try to overcome them together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Colangelo. We get about your 5 points, and I leave the floor to Augusto for getting into this question.
Okay, thank you, Marcello. This is a quite interesting question. Quite difficult to have to provide you with an answer. What we can say is that clearly, with the Russian aggression to Ukraine, something has drastically changed the scenario. This is something that we have to take into account. The postponement of the launch of ExoMars has been already mentioned by Colangelo. So we had very severe consequences also at European level. So how can we, which are the challenges and how can we preserve the cooperation? It's very difficult to provide a unique answer. So I mentioned the agreement that are already in place, and as I said before, maybe we should continue to work in order to have additional agreement that could cover the current gaps that we still have. First of all, we have to rebuild the mutual trust among all the international partners. As Colangelo said before, Russia would like to abandon the ISS and maybe to start with the construction of a new purely national space station. So again, at European level, what we have in terms of security? We had the European Union Strategic Compass that was issued in 2022. Now, it was mentioned before, March this year, a new communication of the European Commission to the EU Council and to the European Parliament has been issued regarding the space strategy for security and defense that was mentioned before. So this is a very important new pillar. This is a communication of the European Commission, so it's not yet a commitment from the European Union. This is currently discussed among all the European Union member states. So, but this is really something new, and I would like also to mention the fact that NATO has included space as a new domain of NATO involvement, on which the NATO is involved. And we have also new space command in a lot of European Union countries. So this is the situation. Something has changed, and the world for sure has now shown very clearly that maybe we have, from a certain point of view, underestimated something in the past. Maybe we were too much optimistic, but in any case, I think that both at national level and the European level, we are now working in order to avoid to solve the current problem. The governance was mentioned before. I would like to say something on this. The Lisbon Treaty is very clear. The responsibility attributed to European Union and the responsibility that are remaining to the member states are very clear, at least for space. Discussions are ongoing because, as probably you know, Commissioner Breton has announced that he would like to propose a new European Union law for space that from a certain point of view is not allowed by Article 189 of the Lisbon Treaty. So also in this case discussions are ongoing, taking into account other articles regarding the internal market. So we are discussing this possibility, in particular a European law that could be could take into account some issues related to SST, space traffic management, and so on which we need to have a common view, a common standard.
Sorry for this. Yes, because we are also almost ready for the connection with the ministry, so I would like to ask you, try to be in time, otherwise our program won't be completed. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. Okay, I can finish this with this. So maybe I know that already some discussion are ongoing in order to verify how can the Lisbon Treaty could be increased, and I would like to finish with. I'm proud to say that Isa has said that in Europe we have a lot of competencies and skills. I would like to say that in Italy we have all the competencies and skills in all the space sector domain. So I'd like to mention this because I think that all of us we should be proud of what has been done in Italy in the last decade, thanks to the governmental support.
Thank you, Augusto. I think that your intervention has opened a lot of windows, but we have to leave the floor to Dottoressa Riccardi and then Dottoressa Muti. Dottoressa Riccardi, please.
Yes, thank you. To be short, I will jump immediately to my conclusion. Basically, all the challenges and all the possible solutions were already set by colleagues. So, in conclusion, what I listed as a main solution, possible, feasible solution, is for sure international cooperation to preserve security, cooperation, and stability in space exploration. So, international cooperation, financial resources, regulatory frameworks, but not only on national or European level, but also in an international level. For that reason, what is very important is the diplomatic efforts, and this is, I guess, a new element to take into account. So let's just summarize: international cooperation, financial resources, stability in financial resources, regulatory frameworks at national, European, and international level, diplomatic efforts to sign international treaties and to share a common framework, technological innovation. I think these are the maybe possible, feasible solutions to follow in order to preserve security, peace, and cooperation. My colleagues already talk about different collaboration environment. My colleague from ASI already mentioned the NATO initiative. So let's just underline the Diana initiative in NATO, the Defense Innovation Accelerator for North Atlantic. One of the first calls that will be launched in June, so now at the end of June. One of the first call, let's say, challenges as they call, the ground for collaboration is on space exploration. So, what is hard? It's hard to just make a fine-tuning sometimes between national initiative, EU initiative, bilateral initiative, multilateral initiatives, and NATO initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dottoressa Riccardi. And now, due to limitation, we leave the floor to Dottoressa Muti, who will close the panel. And so, please, Dottoressa Muti, it's up to you to wrap up and answer to this question.
Thank you very much. It's a difficult task. but I will be very short. I just want to add to what my what other panelists said, that I think if I had to choose one urgent issue is to concentrate on is space traffic management. So finding rules of the road, finding a shared orbital flight rules, because the probability of collision in space is now very high, and it is something that it is in the interest of both states and private actors. So I would say that this is maybe the most urgent thing, and international organizations are the perfect fora for this kind of discussion of alignment. So I completely agree on this. But on regulation, I would add we need a regulation, but without hampering innovation. So I think this is an important element. In Europe, sometimes we, compared to the United States, we have some, let's say, challenges more in being innovative and fast enough in innovation at European level. So I would just like to add this element of regulating without jeopardizing innovation. And I will close here. Thank you, Marcello.
No, thank you, Carolina. It's important this point of innovation, because it's related to what we said on the research, which enables not only competition but also collaboration. I've been asked to close this panel now, so I really would like to thank the panelists for their time and their consideration, and I really hope to meet you all in person quite soon. Thank you.
Thank you.